There's a kind of dark that only exists in the deep south. A dark that's so thick and heavy you feel like you could grab a handful of it. It's not just the absence of light, it's a presence. It's the humid, black water dark of the Louisiana swamplands. And if you've never driven through it at 3 in the morning with nothing but the low rumble of your diesel and the high-pitched drone of a million cicadas for company, then you haven't truly understood what it means to be alone. I've hauled freight through all 48 contiguous states, seen deserts that stretch to the end of the world and mountains that scrape the belly of God. But nothing gets into your soul and festers there like the swamps. This run was a hot load, some kind of specialized pump jack and drilling equipment needed down in the port of New Orleans, and it needed to be there by sunup. No excuses. The dispatcher, a fella from Houston with a voice that sounded like gravel in a coffee can, had routed me on to State Highway 397. On the map, it looked like a gift, a straight, clean shot that cut a good 90 minutes off the usual route. He called it a shortcut. Out here, they call roads like that picker-uppers, 'cause more often than not, the next vehicle down that road is a tow truck picking up the pieces. It was nothing more than a 2-lane strip of crumbling asphalt laid over what felt like a floating sponge, cutting right through the black heart of the Willow Creek marsh. Before I set out into the thick of it, I stopped for a fill-up at a run-down gas station just outside Lafayette. An old-timer was tucked into a corner booth, a guy who looked like he was made of beef jerky and road dust. He watched me as I spread my dog-eared map across a sticky table. "Hoo boy," he wheezed. "You ain't planning on taking the 397 through Willow Creek, are you? Not at this hour." I looked up. "Dispatcher's orders. Hot load. Gotta make time." He shook his head slowly. "Time's a funny thing out there, son. On that stretch of road, it can stretch like taffy, or it can stop altogether. When you see 'em, you just keep your eyes on the road. Do not let yourself get caught up in that dance." I said, "See who?" He said, "The lights, the Willow Creek Lights, spook lights. The science fellows would tell you it's swamp gas, but us old boys, the ones who've had to drive that road for 50 years, we know what they are. They're the ones who didn't make it. They're just lonely. And they put on a show for you, a beautiful, mesmerizing little dance in the dark. All they ask is for you to watch. But if you watch for too long, your hands get loose on the wheel. And before you know it, you're making a hard right turn to join the show. Forever." He tapped my map. "Right there. That's their ballroom. Keep your eyes between the lines. I don't care if you got to sing every damn Johnny Cash song you know. Don't you watch the dance." I offered him a weary smile and thanked him for the advice. Just another truck stop legend, I told myself. Swamp gas, a simple scientific explanation. But as I climbed back into my rig and pointed its nose toward the waiting darkness of Willow Creek, the old man's words echoed deep in my ears, settling deep in my gut. Don't watch the dance. The first 10 miles of Highway 397 were deceptive. The road was decent, and civilization's orange glow still stained the sky in my rearview mirror. But then, you cross a small, rusty iron bridge over a black bayou, and the world changes instantly. The road narrows, the shoulders dissolve. The solid ground gives way to inky, still water. The air itself becomes a different substance, thick, heavy with the smell of damp earth, decaying leaves, and something ancient. The only light was from my headlights, cutting a tunnel through an oppressive velvet dark. Spanish moss hung from the trees like old men's beards. I turned the radio on, but all I could find was a preacher whispering about damnation. I switched it off. The raw sound of the swamp was safer. I drove on. the sheer monotony of the straight road starting to lull me into that familiar road trance. Just swamp gas, I repeated to myself, a mantra to keep the creeping unease at bay. Methane bubbling up and igniting in the humid air, a simple scientific explanation. And then I saw the first one. It was a flicker, a pinprick of pale green light hovering about 10 feet above the black water, pulsing with a slow, gentle rhythm. Swamp gas, I thought. But then a second one appeared next to it, a soft, ethereal blue. A third popped into existence on the other side of the road, a warm, buttery gold. Before I could process it, another half-dozen had blossomed in the darkness. Within a minute, the entire vista in front of me was scattered with them, little globes of silent, colored fire. And they weren't just hovering, they were moving. They swirled and swooped, weaving in and out of the cypress trees in slow, graceful arcs. They spun around each other, orbited one another, broke apart, and came back together in beautiful, complex, impossible patterns. It wasn't a random chemical reaction. It wasn't gas. It was a performance. A silent, grand, ethereal ballet performed just for me in the heart of the midnight swamp. My breath caught in my throat. I was a spectator. I'd never seen anything so beautiful. My first instinct was to slow down, to pull over. Then, like a splash of ice water, the old man's words hit me. "Don't you watch their dance." My grip tightened. "It's just swamp gas," I said out loud. But the lights, they moved with an intelligence, a fluid and coordinated purpose. And as I drew closer, it almost felt like they knew I was there. They seemed to brighten, their choreographed movements becoming more intricate, more inviting. I was in the heart of it now, the very ballroom the old man had described. The lights were no longer just a spectacle in the distance. They were right alongside my truck, a silent escort of phantom flames. It was like driving through a living nebula. I kept my eyes glued to the center line, a lifeline of faded yellow paint. The temptation to just turn my head for one good long look was overwhelming. My speed began to drop, the needle creeping down from 60 to 50 to 45 without me even realizing it. My brain was fighting a war with my eyes. And then the feeling came, a heavy, dreamy lethargy, a kind of sweet, sorrowful peace. The constant motion of the lights was a powerful sedative. I was awash in a profound sense of nostalgia and loneliness. It was the feeling of wanting to stop, of wanting to just rest. This wouldn't be so bad, a tiny voice whispered in my head, just to stop and watch for a while. I blinked hard, a single violent shake of my head snapping me partway back. I bit my own lip until I tasted blood, the jolt of pain a welcome anchor. But it was too late. My eyes, of their own accord, flickered to the right for just a second. The lights were weaving a pattern that looked like a great, slow-turning celestial wheel. It was the most heartbreakingly beautiful thing I'd ever seen. A sudden, jarring bam thump lurched me back into my body. The wheel was ripped from my hands. I had drifted. My passenger side tires had slipped completely off the pavement and onto the soft, sucking, muddy shoulder of the swamp. I wrestled with the wheel, the 40-ton trailer threatening to pull the entire rig down. With a surge of pure terror-fueled adrenaline, I jerked the wheel hard to the left. The truck roared in protest. But then the tires bit down on asphalt again. The rig shot back onto the road, fishtailing violently before I brought it under control. I was wide awake now, my body drenched in a cold sweat. It wasn't swamp gas. The old man was right. The lights were a lure, and I had taken the bait. The near miss had shattered the hypnotic spell. The lights were no longer beautiful to me. They were predators. My foot was now jammed to the floor. Speed was my only shield. But they weren't done with me. My rejection of their invitation seemed to make them agitated, angry. They grew more insistent, bolder.
their movements frantic and chaotic. They pressed in closer, dozens of them, surrounding my truck like a swarm of spectral, furious hornets. They flashed and pulsed with a new urgency. It was no longer a dance. It was a desperate, silent scream, a demand. Look at us! Join us! Then one light, a brilliant white one, flew directly in front of my truck and just hovered there. I couldn't avoid it. Against my will, my eyes locked onto it, and the light changed. The fiery globe congealed, taking shape. I wasn't looking at an orb of light anymore. I was looking at a face. It was the face of a man, ghostly and transparent, his features twisted and an expression of eternal sorrow. The tired, hollow eyes of a trucker. A perfect, terrible snapshot of a man's last moment on earth. Just as quickly as it appeared, the image dissolved, but the floodgates were open. My eyes darted from light to light, and each one, for a flicker of a second, I saw another soul. A young woman in a pale blue light, an old man in a fishing hat, two lovers locked in an embrace. It was a floating graveyard, a spectral company of the lost. They weren't angry. They were just stuck, desperately hoping for company. And they almost had me. The realization sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. I was looking at my own potential watery fate. I don't know how long I drove like that, trapped in a waking nightmare. And then I saw it. Up ahead, a metal sign, the green sign for the parish line. Salvation was a quarter-mile away. As if they knew they were losing me, the lights made one final frantic effort. They converged on my truck, bathing the entire rig in a blinding, strobing, multicolored light. But I just kept my foot down. I drove through the storm, my engine roaring in defiance. The moment my front tires hit the solid iron planks of the bridge, the lights vanished. They just switched off, snuffed out like 100 candles in a single breath. 1 second, I was in the middle of a chaotic frenzy, and the next, there was only the normal swampy darkness behind me. I was alone again, truly alone.
I didn't slow down until I was 5 miles past that bridge and saw the welcoming glow of a 24-hour diner. I pulled in, killed the engine, and just sat there, my whole body shaking. Eventually, I stumbled out of the cab. On the passenger side, caked thick over the tires and splashed halfway up the side of the trailer, was a thick, black, stinking layer of swamp mud and dark water weeds. It was my proof, my trophy. A few more inches to the right, and the swamp would have claimed the whole thing. It's been years since that night. I never took that shortcut again. I never took another load that sent me through the Louisiana swamps after dark. Some things aren't worth the price. I become one of the old-timers now, the guy with the tired eyes sitting in diners late at night, watching the young, confident drivers plan their routes. And when I see one of them trace a finger along that shortcut, that deadly black line on the map marked Highway 397, I feel a cold whisper from the past. I get up, feeling every mile I've ever driven in my bones, shuffle over and clear my throat. I see the flicker of dismissal in their eyes before I even speak, but I start my story anyway, the same way the old man did for me, hoping they'll listen. You ain't planning on taking the 397 through Willow Creek, are you? Not at night? Because I know the truth. The lights aren't evil. They don't want to hurt you. They're just lonely. And they put on the most beautiful, heartbreaking show you'll ever see. But it's a show with one hell of a price of admission. And they're always, always looking for a new dancer to join their endless silent chorus.